Hello everyone! Today I'm going to tell you a truly insane story about a woman navigating the deepest grief imaginable, only to have her best friend of 20 years turn on her with a cruelty that is hard to comprehend. What followed was a calculated months-long campaign of harassment, insidious lies, and shocking betrayal that threatened to destroy her new life and her family. It was an incredibly difficult ordeal, and the ending is something no one saw coming. If you appreciate stories of resilience and the power of true friendship, please like this video and subscribe for more daily content. Let's begin. My closest, most intimate friend of 2 decades told me not to come to her baby shower. Her reason? She said I would bring down the mood because of my recent devastating miscarriage. I tried to reassure her, my voice cracking with a pain she refused to acknowledge, that I could still find it in my heart to be happy for her, that her joy didn't negate my sorrow. But she just mumbled a few dismissive words and rushed out the door, leaving me standing alone in the wreckage of our friendship. I didn't say anything more. That was 2 long, painful years ago. Last month, at around 10 o'clock at night, my doorbell started ringing again and again, a frantic, desperate sound that sent a jolt of fear through me. She was back, leaving desperate, pleading notes on my porch, her once perfect handwriting now shaky and uneven. To understand the depth of this betrayal, you have to understand the depth of our bond and the depth of my loss. When I lost the baby, it happened on a Tuesday. I was at work, in the middle of a presentation when I felt the first terrifying cramp. A few minutes later, the blood started a warm, horrifying rush down my legs. I broke down completely on the drive to the hospital, my vision blurred by tears, my world collapsing in on itself. It took the nurses 2 long, agonizing hours to run the tests and finally confirm it with a quiet, clinical sympathy: another miscarriage. The weight of that loss was immense, a hollow, aching void that felt like it would swallow me whole. The very first person I called when I left the hospital, my hands trembling as I clutched the phone, was not my husband, not my mother, but my best friend Haley. We had been inseparable since we were kids. Our lives intertwined since the 2nd grade, when she had wordlessly shared her fruit snacks with me because I had forgotten my lunch money. And now, 20 years later, she was still the first person I turned to in a crisis, my anchor in the storm of life. When Haley found out she was pregnant last June, her joy was my joy. She FaceTimed me from her bathroom, holding up to the pregnancy test, screaming, finally, over and over again, her face a beautiful mask of pure, unadulterated happiness. So, when she sent me the link to her meticulously curated baby shower board on Pinterest, filled with images of sage green and delicate wildflowers, I immediately knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I wanted to plan the entire thing for her, and I did. I poured my entire heart into it. I handwrote 45 individual invitations in perfect calligraphy because Haley had once mentioned that she loved the personal touch. I spent hours on the phone, sorting out a dizzying array of food allergies and bizarre dietary restrictions for 32 different guests, including her new mother-in-law's strange, inexplicable request for nothing that starts with the letter P. I even drove 2 hours out of the city to a specialty fabric store just to find the exact, perfect shade of sage green linen for the tablecloths, the one she had pinned online. But to me, none of it felt like a burden. It was all worth it. We were talking more than we had in years, our daily calls filled with laughter and excitement. It felt like I was getting my best friend back after a period of distance. Then, just 2 weeks before the shower, my world fell apart again. I called Haley, my voice a broken whisper, to tell her that I had had another miscarriage. The line went completely, utterly silent. I waited, expecting her to offer words of comfort, to say something kind, to just stay on the phone and breathe with me through the pain. But instead, after a long, cold pause, she just muttered, "Oh, dang, that sucks." I could hear the distinct, infuriating sound of her nails tapping on her phone screen, as if she were texting someone else in the middle of this conversation. After another agonizing pause, she said, "Look, don't stress about it. I can find someone else to plan the shower." And then she hung up. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't offer a single word of sympathy. She just hung up. I tried to convince myself that she was just overwhelmed with her own pregnancy hormones, that she didn't know what to say. I made excuses for her cruelty because the alternative was too painful to face. A few days later, she knocked on my door. Haley was standing on my porch holding a large, beautifully arranged gift basket filled with expensive scented candles, a bouquet of fresh flowers that were still warm from the bakery. For a moment, a wave of relief washed over me. It was the first time I had felt truly seen, truly acknowledged since the loss. I pulled her into a tight hug, so grateful for this gesture of friendship. But she didn't hug me back. She just stood there, her body stiff and unyielding, her arms hanging limply at her sides. Then, she stepped back and said, "Can we talk?" The room went quiet. "This is hard for me to say," she began, her face a mask of fake sympathy, "but I think it would be best if you skip the baby shower." I stared at her, completely stunned, unable to process her words. "My mom thinks it's bad luck," she continued, "to have someone at a baby shower who has recently had a miscarriage. I don't really agree with that, of course, but I do think you would bring the mood down." I tried to argue, to tell her that it wasn't true, that I could still celebrate her, that my grief wouldn't overshadow her joy. But she just kept that fake, placating smile on her face, nodding and muttering little sounds, just waiting for me to stop talking. Minutes later, she was out the door, pretending she had some urgent plans to get to at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, The next morning I woke up to a text message that made my entire body go cold. It was from Haley. "Hey love. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page about the baby shower tomorrow. You know how sensitive and emotional you can get sometimes, and I just hate for you to have a breakdown and start crying at my party. It would just be so awkward for everyone. Anyway, my sister Amy will be by to pick up all the party stuff tomorrow. I'll Venmo you for the decorations after I've had a chance to check all the receipts. Thanks." 3 weeks of my life of carefully hand-making hundreds of delicate paper flowers, $800 of my own money spent on decorations, 45 invitations, each one written by hand with love and care. And now she was treating me like I was a party rental store, an invoice to be settled. On the day of the shower, I stayed in bed, napping on and off, adrift in a sea of pure exhaustion and profound sadness. When I finally woke up at 8 o'clock that night and looked at my phone, I broke down completely. My social media feeds were flooded with photos from the party. Everyone was there, smiling and laughing by the chocolate fountain I had ordered, posing in front of the flower wall I had spent days constructing. They were tagging Haley's sister, Amy, and thanking her for organizing such a beautiful and perfect event. Meanwhile, I was lying in my sweat-soaked bed, feeling completely and utterly empty. And that's when the full, devastating weight of it all hit me. I hadn't just lost another baby, I had lost my best friend too. I blocked Haley on everything that night and deleted all of my social media accounts for good. The loss of that friendship forced me to realize that most of the people in my life were distant, almost afraid to truly connect. So, I started over. I rebuilt my life from the ground up. I remarried the true love of my life, and now we have a beautiful, healthy baby of our own, a little girl named Emma. Things were going great, better than I had ever imagined. Until 6 months ago. Amy called me out of the blue. She was pregnant. I was hesitant, unsure of her motives until she asked me to be her baby's godmother. I was completely confused. Was this some kind of sick joke? I asked, my voice cautious. "Because she's my sister," Amy replied, her voice firm and clear, "and I know exactly what kind of person she is. What she did to you 2 years ago was cruel and unforgivable. I want my daughter to have a godmother who shows up, who is loyal, who is kind, even when life gets hard." The christening was beautiful. I helped Amy with every little detail, and unlike Haley, she was deeply, genuinely thankful for all of it. As I stood at the front of the church holding her precious baby Leah in my arms, I heard the sharp, angry sound of heels clicking across the marble floor. It was Haley slipping out a side door, unable to witness the moment. I didn't realize it then, but Amy's choice, this public affirmation of our bond, had hit her hard, and she was not going to let it go quietly. As I stood in the church parking lot after the ceremony, still a little shaky from the emotion of holding baby Leah, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was from Haley, and she was furious, demanding to know how Amy could betray her own family like this. I looked up and spotted her car, idling near the exit of the parking lot. I walked over, my heels echoing on the pavement. Through the window, I could see her gripping the steering wheel so hard that her knuckles had turned white. She cracked the window just enough for her voice to slip through, a hiss of pure venom. She accused me of manipulating Amy for the past 2 years, of orchestrating this entire scene just to humiliate her. She truly, delusionally believed that I had planned everything out of spite. I remained calm. I told her, my voice even and steady, that I hadn't spoken a single word to Amy until 6 months ago, when Amy had called me completely out of the blue. Just then, Amy herself walked up to the car. She told Haley, her voice firm and unwavering, that this had been her decision and her decision alone, and that it was based on years of watching how Haley treated the people in her life. Haley's face twisted with a rage that was terrifying to witness. Then she hit below the belt. She threatened to tell their mother about Amy's deepest, most painful secret, a college pregnancy that she had terminated years ago. It was a low, cruel blow designed to inflict maximum pain. That's when Jake, Amy's husband, walked up. He had heard everything. He moved to his wife's side and said, his voice serious and final, that Haley was no longer welcome at any of their family gatherings. Haley froze for a second. Then, before peeling out of the parking lot, she leaned out the window, looked directly at me, and said, with a chilling smile, "I know where you work now. Karma always comes back around." At the reception, a cousin of Amy's, David, came over to me, his face pale. He told me that he had found Haley in the coat room, digging through the gift bags. When he confronted her, she claimed she was just looking for her card. But he had already seen her phone out, taking pictures. She had taken photos of my car in the parking lot, specifically zooming in on the daycare sticker in the rear window. The sticker that clearly showed my daughter Emma's daycare name and, worse, our unique pickup authorization number. Within an hour, Haley had already launched her campaign of terror. She began texting our mutual acquaintances, people we had known for 20 years, twisting the story, painting me as an emotionally unstable predator who had stolen her sister to fill the emptiness left by my miscarriage. That evening, my own husband, David, was reviewing the footage from our Ring doorbell. I heard his sharp gasp and hurried over. The footage was from earlier that morning at 6:30 a.m., just hours before the christening. Haley's car had driven slowly past our house, and in the clear, undeniable footage, we could see her holding up her phone, recording our home. The next day, at daycare drop-off, the director asked to speak with me privately. Someone claiming to be my sister had called, expressing deep concern about Emma's home environment and asking the staff to watch for any signs of neglect. I was horrified. That night I logged into my old, abandoned Facebook account and saw, with a fresh wave of terror, that all the vulnerable, personal things I had ever shared about my miscarriages, my divorce, my struggles with depression, were still public. I had never changed the privacy settings. And now Haley had access to an arsenal of my own pain to use against me. The next day she showed up at a cafe near my work and sat at the table right next to me, talking loudly with a friend about desperate. The day after that, my boss received an anonymous email accusing me of being emotionally unstable and a potential liability to the company's image. The day after that I had a meeting with HR. The HR director, a woman I had only met twice, had a framed sorority picture on her desk. And right in the center of the photo, arms linked and smiling, was Haley. The connection was too perfect, too sinister, to be a coincidence. That night Amy showed me the messages. Haley had gone full blackmail, threatening to send old, embarrassing party photos from Amy's college days to Jake's conservative employer if Amy didn't fix the situation and cut ties with me. I started mapping out the pattern in my mind. It was clear now. Haley was methodically, systematically working her way through every single shared contact from our 20-year friendship, carefully poisoning each and every relationship with a cocktail of rumors, exaggerations, and outright lies. She was trying to isolate me one connection at a time. Then a surprising call from Sophie, Jake's sister. She told me that years ago, Haley had threatened to report Amy to Child Protective Services over a small, insignificant loan that Amy had refused to give her. That threat, that fear, had been hanging over Amy's head ever since. Haley created a private Facebook group called Protecting Our Children and invited nearly every parent from Emma's daycare, using a cropped photo of my own daughter as the group's banner image. We found footprints in the flower bed right under Emma's bedroom window. A parent at the playground saw Haley standing off to the side, taking photos of Emma from different angles, over and over again. The police were sympathetic but blunt. Without a direct threat, there was little they could do. I felt like I was being hunted. I stayed calm, I stuck to my routines, I didn't react, and slowly people started to notice the contrast. While I remained composed and consistent, Haley was becoming increasingly erratic, crying in public one moment and aggressively pushing people to take her side the next. The daycare director, after reviewing the visitor logs and discovering that Haley had lied her way into the building on 3 separate occasions, immediately tightened the school's security protocols. Her story, her carefully constructed narrative of victimhood, didn't just fall apart, it crumbled in public. More and more people from our shared past began to speak up, connecting the dots. Realizing they had all seen Haley parked in her car outside the daycare at different times, approaching people with the same half-truths, the same manipulative tears. The whispers, once directed at me, were now to her parent network, once a source of my terror, became my strongest line of defense. They saw the truth with their own eyes. Amy's mother, who had spent years enabling Haley's toxic behavior, finally saw the truth for herself after witnessing Haley's unhinged meltdown at the hospital after Amy gave birth to her beautiful baby girl. That moment changed everything. Thanksgiving plans were updated and Haley for the first time was not invited. The decision came from the family matriarch, and it carried more weight than anything Amy or I could have ever said. Then came the turning point I never expected. Haley's husband, after learning that she had been coaching their own young son to ask other children at the daycare questions about Emma's family, finally left her. That was a line that even he could not defend. Through all of this, something remarkable and beautiful happened. Amy, Jake, my husband David, and I, we became a true family, not by circumstance but by choice. We showed up for each other, we protected each other. We faced the storm together. That I now know is what a real family does. A few days later, the family, now a united front, gathered at Amy's mother's house. The goal was clear: to set permanent, unshakable boundaries around Haley's behavior. But halfway through the meeting, Haley showed up, uninvited. What followed wasn't a conversation, it was a final devastating confrontation. She cried. She played the victim, she denied everything. But this time it didn't work. The evidence was presented, the videos, the screenshots, the witness statements, and that's when her mask dropped for the last time. She broke down, not with an apology, but with a bitter, resentful confession. She admitted that she had always believed I was the daughter her own mother had wanted, the one she could never be. That every good thing in my life felt like a personal failure, a reminder of her own perceived inadequacies. In the end, I chose not to press charges. I chose a mutual, legally binding no-contact agreement. It wasn't forgiveness, it was a choice for peace. The agreement was detailed and strict. Any violation would trigger immediate legal action. Her husband, who was present at the signing, made it clear that this was her last chance. Haley had finally run out of people to fool. With her influence finally mercifully cut off, I could feel my own peace returning. Freedom wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, it was steady, it was the feeling of releasing a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding for years. 6 months later, I stood proudly as the godmother to Amy's beautiful baby girl, who she had named Hope. The church was filled with people who had shown up for us not because they had to, but because they had chosen to. Our chosen family. And in that moment I finally, truly understood. Family isn't about proximity or shared history or blood. It's about the people who celebrate your joy without needing to control it. The people who stand with you in the storm. The people who show up,